All right. Shruti, you want to begin with your quick intro?
Okay, so I have been working with this IT industry for 4.5 years. So initially, I started with the data stage tool, which is basically related to ETL and data warehousing. So there I had exposure on SQL, Unix, Python, and then I slowly switched to big data technologies. So I started with Hive and then Pig and Hive scripting, HQLs and Hive scripting. And now I'm working on Spark Scala with Unix scripting. So
Okay.
I have
Okay.
not So I'm also using here Azure Logic Apps, and so I have data ingestion from I'm also using Scoop for data ingestion. I'm also using Logic App for data ingestion. I also used AWS S3 for data ingestion.
Sure. So, can you double click on your other data ingestion pipelines primarily apart from Scoop?
Uh, can you please repeat?
Yeah, can you double click on the data ingestion pipelines which you mentioned apart from Scoop? Like you mentioned about Amazon S3, AWS
Yeah.
S3. So, how are you pulling the data from there and so on?
So there are other teams which are putting the data into S3 buckets. So using my Python scripting, I am just like using the command desk SCP to pull the data from S3, and then I'm loading into my HDFS Hive tables.
Okay, and how frequent is the data which is flowing, and what is the volume of data which you are handling?
So it's incremental. So in and around you can say 5,000 to 10,000 rows comes in. It's not huge, yeah.
Okay, okay. All right. So you mentioned for data ingestion you use Scoop. Using Scoop, what is your destination? You dump it in HDFS and then use Spark on top of it, or you dump it for Hive tables?
I pick data from SQL Server, and then I dump it in Hive tables, and then I run Spark over it, Spark Scala.
Okay, okay. Sure. So in terms of maturity, if you were to rate across the whole ecosystem, like which tools you are mature in your understanding and which tools you're like relatively new and exploring yet?
So Scala, I believe I'm doing good in it. Scala, Scoop, Hive, and in my new organization, I've started working on Kudu itself. So Kudu is something new that I'm experiencing. Kudu and Azure Logic Apps.
Sure. Okay. Okay. Uh, so I saw in your resume that you have some experience working on Cloudera distribution as well, right?
Right,
So,
right.
so Cloudera provides their own implementation, which is somewhat similar to Hive. Do you know what it is called and how it differentiates with Hive?
So I only came to know like Kudu is something which is related to Cloudera itself. There's no like Kudu allows us to do updates on the table. So there's no such functionality in Hive. So this major difference that I saw here.
Okay, let's understand. So, Kudu is still relying on HDFS for storage of data, right? And
Right.
HDFS on its own is basically not helping us with any updates as such in this case. So, how
Mhm.
exactly are the updates handled in case of Kudu, which Hive is not able to handle?
Like, so Kudu has its own structure and engine. It's just that it uses HDFS as storage. So we mentioned the primary keys. It has different DDLs also. So in that we do not define the partition bys, or we don't define the row format delimiters. So we just define the all the columns, and then in the end we define primary keys. So that primary key is used as you can say checksum, or not checksum. Yeah, you can use it as a hash ID to see which two columns are having same hash ID, so it's an update and all that things. So it has its own functionality to check on the updates.
Sure, sure. like let's take this example. Let's say that you are given a free hand, given that I understand you have some hands on automation as well.
Mhm.
Let's say that I want to develop a tool on top of HDFS which is able to take my updates as well. So how will you
Okay.
approach it if that? How will you approach it in that case? Like say, for example, I want to build a key value store, okay, wherein I will provide a key. You'll be storing a value something like memcache or Redis on top of HDFS. How will you approach it, and what all things you will take care in that?
So you basically want to update a table, right?
I basically want to create a key value type of table on top of HDFS. So how will you approach? That will have your get queries, that will have your put or update queries as well.
Okay. Mhm. So basically, I can have a. You want me to write a common functionality function, right?
No, I basically want you to devise a component. So assume that you are the architect of that component, and what all features you will use given the file system interfaces for HDFS. How will you approach it? How will you design your application or your component and so on?
Okay, yeah. So as I need to have updates, um, update encapsulation also. So I'll firstly create the kudu table and kudu table, and then I'll use my source. Source can be Hive also, and then yeah, I mean it's all happens in the query itself. Like I need to create just the data frame
Uh,
from my source, and in my data frame source, it automatically sees the columns which are mentioned as primary key in my kudu tables. So it and then I need to just write data frame dot kudu context dot data frame dot upsert, and then it will automatically
so
upsert the rows.
yes, but Shruti, let's take this example wherein you are only allowed to use HDFS and no other component. No kudu, no hive in place.
Okay.
And your component will expose an API, and that API is something through which other components will be able to store and retrieve data or update data, which is getting stored in HDFS. So if you were to devise such component only with interaction with HDFS, how will you approach?
So should I use the I mean, as HDFS2 has the update facility also. So we want to discuss it prior to it, right?
Yes. Uh,
So
yeah,
see,
assume that you are using that update functionality. So can you double click on that? Like what kind of updates will it help me support, and how will I be able to accomplish this task?
so in the HDFS2, so if I want to, so if the update functionality is enabled, so in that I need to check like the file format should be ORC and the bucketing should be enabled, and then there are 5 properties like concurrency and the transaction manager and then compactor. These 2 properties should be set as per the rules, and after that I can what was it? Yeah. After that, I can run the update query also in my HQL. The only thing is that the columns on which I'm bucketing will not be able to update because that will act as my primary key over there.
Okay, okay.
And
Sure.
another method like prior to this update facility, it was like let's say I'm creating daily partitions. So today is 21st and yesterday it was 20th. So on 22nd, new records will come up. So which will hold the records for 22nd, and let's say there's one update for 21. So by this I can do distinct dates like up to from which date I'm getting the data on 22nd. So it will give me 2 dates, 21 and 22. So I'll pick the data from 21 partition, and I'll make a union on the 21st data and the today's data, and then I'll generate the rank function, and whenever there's a duplicate, then I mean I'm telling you for this SED type 1. So if it
Mhm.
so at most it can have 2 rows if I'm getting an update. So the previous version would be the previous updated version, and the latest record will come up with today's date data, and the order ID would be the same. So now I can generate rank function over it, and I should give rank 1 to the today's date records and rank 2 to the previous records, and then in the end I'll pick rank 1. So in that case, whatever updates were there for 21, it will pick rank 1 with the updated record, and the rest of the data which do not have any modifications will have only one row which will have only one rank, that is 1. So I'll have the completely refreshed partition, completely refreshed data in my partition 21, and my today's data will have only one rank 1, so it will get into today's partition 22. So in this ways I can updates the HDFS tables.
Okay, okay. Not exactly what I was expecting, but that's okay. We'll proceed ahead. You said that you have worked with Scoop as well, right? So have you worked
Correct.
with incremental loads in Scoop, and how do you handle basically imports and exports in Scoop? Can you give me a brief about it?
Yes, so we have both like incremental and as well as complete for truncate load. So for incremental, we have this functionality like the row ID. We have the column row ID, which is same for a batch or a day. So we generally store this row ID in a small table, which we have in batch table. So for today's date, this was a maximum row ID that we received till yesterday. So before running my new scoop command, I basically fetch the max row ID in my shell script, and then in my where in my scoop import command in my where condition I just mention this uh, row ID is greater than max row ID, which I have fetched previously in the query. So yeah, so
Okay,
mentioning in
okay,
where and auditing, so we can pick the latest incremental record.
sure.
Also, when we
And
use where, then we have to give this. We have the ability to increase the mappers, as also we should use split keys to parallelize the data.
sure. What if there's some constraint on the, assume that I am the DBA and I
Mhm.
apply a constraint of not exceeding 4 connections to the database, and you or some intern under you is trying to run that scoop job with 20 mappers. What will happen in that case?
So it fails in that case. Yeah, this has
Okay,
happened with us. Yeah.
okay, okay, all right. Cool. The other
So
question is, say,
in that case, the
yeah.
admin team has increased the number of connections for us.
Sure, sure. Understood. Let's say that while doing the scoop, right? So my job is not writing directly into Hive, but it is loading the data into HDFS. And
Okay.
somehow when I'm trying to fetch the data, I'm getting date along with timestamp. While my
Mm-hmm.
requirement is that in Hive, I need to have the partition key based on date and not based on timestamp. So how will you handle this kind of scenario?
Okay, so you're saying that okay, so in Scoop I can mention the target directory. So in my target directory I'll get the data, and it is normal HDFS link, right? You're saying, right? Now I need to
Yes.
put this data into that. Okay, so I can write this data into a temporary Hive table, and from this temporary Hive table I can easily alter the date format from Unix timestamp and Unix timestamp, and then I can load it into the main table.
Okay. Any other approach which you can follow in this?
Okay. But the requirement is this, right? Am I
Yeah,
wrong
the
in the
requirement.
okay?
No, no,
Okay.
no. I'm basically looking at what all different alternatives you can think of in this.
Okay. Basically, I need to remove the timestamps, right?
Yes.
So one more thing, when we are fetching the data, so in that we mention the column names also, map columns I, and then in that if I give the different data type for that column, so it will arrive it like that. I mean, or in my select query, I can change the data type, or in my select query itself, in the scoop select query, I can change the date format.
Okay, okay, sure. That should be good. Okay. Cool. Let's come to Spark now. So in Spark, what happens when I basically have my Scala class, which is doing some RDD based operations, and at the end, in terms of action, it is basically dumping the output into HDFS location. I compile it, I create a jar, and then I do Spark -submit. So what all things happen in the background?
Okay, so my program will first get broken down into stages,
And
and I guess
how
yeah.
Yeah, if you can double click on each aspect of it as well, like how the stages will be determined, how the number of tasks will be determined, and so on.
Okay, so number of stages basically depends on the number of shuffle functions I have on RDDs, and then we break the things into tasks, and tasks are by default 200, but we can increase and decrease it accordingly using the Spark shuffle partition property, or using the
Okay,
repartition also.
okay, okay. And after that, what will happen?
So my like in can you elaborate, like in which direction I should say?
So let's say, okay, you mentioned about partitions, you mentioned about creation of stages and tasks. What I want you to elaborate is, assume that I'm a layman and I give that spark-submit command, and at the end, I get the output in HDFS. If you were to explain it to me, okay, this is how the thing could be monitored, this is how the processes would be brought up, and
Okay.
this is how the flow would be. That is what I'm looking at primarily.
Okay, so yeah, so first granularity is stages, and so we can check the web UI to look into like which stage is running, and so stages that run in sequence always, and so we can see which stage is running now. So when you click on the stage thing, you can see um, the executors it is having, the number of executors it is having, and the task that it is running. You can check on the DAG that what function the stage is doing, and in task, if you click on the logs, you can see that what action this task is performing, and when all the tasks are done, all the stages are done, then the data is sent to, like in the last stage where you have done your write command. So in that command, in that stage, the data will go back to the driver, and finally the driver does the last steps the driver does, and that's how the whole job gets completed.
Sure, sure. Okay. So let's say in that same program, right, I have references to RDD, and within that RDD, I'm trying to do some shuffle operations, as you mentioned, and after that, I'm trying to take an action, which is basically writing out onto HDFS. Now it will, as you mentioned, it will have some driver, something which is being executed on the executor as well. Now, if, say, for example, I have a utility which can look into that particular process which is being executed on each of the executors and the driver as well, then what all references should I be expecting to find at what place? Like, what can I find at the driver place? What can I find at the executor place in terms of the references with respect to the program which I've submitted?
Okay. So executors basically they or the task, they have all the information about the joins or the source table that it is reading, and they tell you about the memory they are, like after each step they tell you the memory that is free for that executor, and in the
So
end they yeah.
Shruti, every executor will know the complete detail for the table. or for the source data?
Not the complete one, no. The partition which is reading, so it will have information about that partition.
Okay, okay,
So only the
go ahead.
broadcasted data has the full partition, has a complete data into the executor.
Okay.
So yes, and for driver, I'm not sure at which all parameter it includes,
Sure, no worries. Okay.
or which all
Uh,
information it holds. Yeah.
yeah. Okay. Okay. I mean, what I can understand is you would have done Spark Summit multiple times during your career, right? So, have you
Mm-hmm.
ever seen the logs when you are doing the Spark Summit? Sometimes it says, okay, running your Spark job in Uber mode. Do you know what is Uber mode?
No, no. Uber mode, you're saying?
Yes.
No, sorry.
Have you read that log by any chance?
I have majorly looked into like task logs, but
Okay.
yeah, not these logs.
Okay. Okay. Sure. Uh, okay. The other question is, like, let's say, for example, in my Spark program, which I have written in Scala, I am trying
Mm-hmm.
to read a SQL file and then basically trying to execute that using Spark SQL and dumping the data either into Hive or into some other external
Mm-hmm.
location.
Mm-hmm.
And similarly, on the contrary, I have another colleague of mine. He or she simply implemented the Spark SQL file, and they are using Spark-SQL as a command for executing that. Then, if you are the architect in that place, which option will you approach under what circumstances?
So you are submitting using Spark Summit, and the other guys using Spark SQL to run that, right?
That's correct.
Okay. So Spark Summit, I mean so actually I've not used the other method. So you're saying that I can by typing Spark SQL in my Unix screen and passing this file, it will run it in the Spark way, right? That's what you're saying?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. But I guess I would prefer Spark Summit because it allows me to set properties in between running different SQLs. If I want to change a property, like I have two SQLs, if I want to change the property in between, so I can do that. And
Okay.
other various opportunities it allows us to do. But I guess in Spark SQL, I have to run multiple for multiple files. I need to write multiple commands. That's what I can think of.
Okay. Okay. Cool. Okay. Earlier you mentioned something about operations which are extending the shuffle boundaries because of which the stages would be determined. Can you give me
Mhm.
a few of the examples of such operations?
So operations, they are generally like group by. When we do group by, and we want to check, let's say, maximum of a group, maximum date or maximum price. So for that, we have to go through every partition's data. So in that case, a new stage will be generated. And in case of joins, and yes, these two are major, like which creates shuffles between the network, group by and joins.
Okay. Okay. You also mentioned that the default value for the number of tasks is 200. How
Hmm.
can we
Yeah.
tweak it to increase or decrease it?
So with the property, one second. So with the property shuffle, spark shuffle dot partitions, we can increase or decrease the shuffle partitions, and or we can this property is used when this property I mean it alters the partitions when we at the back end, like when we are doing joins. So if I'm mentioning 400, so it will create 400 small partitions, and then it will join at the back end. And uh, I guess the number of part files will still be 200. If I want to change the part file itself, then I need to use repartition coalesce.
Sure, sure. And okay, in case of repartition, when would it cause shuffle on the wire? When it will not cause shuffle on the wire?
So when we use repartition, and you asking about repartition coalesce, right?
Yes.
So okay, so in repartition, we are trying to, let's say in my one partition there's a lot of data, so I want to like broke it down to smaller pieces. So in that case, I use repartition. Whenever I need to increase the number of partitions, I use repartition, and when I want to decrease the partitions, so I use coalesce for that. And repartition is heavier because it try to do load balancing also, but coalesce it just wants to decrease the number of partition, doesn't look for the load balancing. It can put based on the locality, data locality.
Sure, sure. Okay, Shruti, I think I am through with this interview. So I'll quickly share your feedback.
Okay.
So in terms of your understanding of the ecosystem, you are doing good over there. You need to work a little bit more in trying to understand whether the kind of question which is being asked is something which is theoretical, something which is on practical grounds, or something which is design oriented. Like the
Mm-hmm.
first question which I was asking, so what I was expecting primarily over there is, okay, if I already gave you what kind of system you have to mimic, right? So you already understand the kind of requirements which are there, and then how will you basically build a system on top of it without using any external entities, of course. So that is something which I think was missed. The other thing is little lack of experience, primarily on the Spark side, which was evident using few of the questions. One of which was, okay, have you seen what is Uber mode, and have you seen the logs? The other one was, okay, what kind of references will be stored in the driver versus executors, and so on. You have good grip on understanding how stages and partitions are built when the data shuffling will be more or less. So you're doing good. Uh, yeah, that's about it. I think you're on the right track, and a little bit of a preparation and more granular eyes on the operation will certainly help you forward.
Okay, sure, yeah.
Yeah, all right.
Thank you.